What's up guys, ADCG here, welcome back to Yugioh Deck of the Day. Today we have a deck that I've been wanting to profile for quite a while, and this is MERMAIL, but I was waiting for the ban list just to make sure that Needle Fiber doesn't get hit, because this is one of those decks that did use Needle Fiber but without Link Cross, so it would be a shame if Fiber got the hit instead of Link Cross and such decks that only need Fiber got a really big hit, but Needle Fiber is still around, so this is one deck that can abuse it very well even without Link Cross, because Needle Fiber is a water monster, so it takes advantage of the restrictions that you don't really care about in this particular deck. So I'm going to show you how I play the deck. I have some spicy decks that you might find a little unorthodox and that people have actually stopped playing for quite some time in this deck, but I will explain why I play them. So before we begin, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So to start off with the MERMAIL monsters, I play 3 copies of Megalo. I still like 3 Megalo, even though I've seen a lot of profiles with 2 or even 1 copy. I really like this card because if your normal summon gets stopped in this deck, so if you summon your Diva and it gets dashed, or if you're going second and your opponent maybe conquistadors your Neptabyss, then you can't really do much unless you have Teus or Megalo. And since Megalo is that extender, I don't see a reason why not to max it, because you have 3 Dragoon now, so it's very easy to get it out of your hand, so you can actually get more searches, and with Lapis Dragon in the deck, you can get into Needle Fiber, and Megalo also gives you a search one of your spells and traps, so I think it's a really good card, and if you're playing this deck, I'm pretty sure that you will eventually come to play 3 copies once you see that Disruption can hurt this deck if you rely too much on your normal summon. 3 copies of Abystius. Abystius is much better than Megalo because it only needs 1 discard, so you don't really have to have too many cards in your hand to use it. It searches a level 4 lower MERMAIL monster or summon. It triggers Dragoon. Both Megalo and Teus are level 7, which is really important because of a certain card I play. And this deck, you will see that it utilizes a lot of generic water support that wasn't really meant for MERMAIL, but since they are water, they can actually be used very efficiently in the deck. For the one-offs, play 1 copy of Abyss Pike, really good. It's another normal summon that you can get if you don't have your Diva or your Neptabyss. It's a searchable monster, so yeah, that's why you play 1. You can search whenever you want with your Teus, so you can summon it, and when it's summoned, you discard a water to search one of your level 3 monsters, and usually what you search with is 1 copy of Abyss Gund, because Gund gives you a reborn when it's sent to the grave. And I do play 1 copy of Abyss Lint because I really like the synergy it has with Topologic Bomber Dragon. When you use Abyss Sphere during your opponent's turn, then you can board wipe your opponent's main monster zone with your Topologic Bomber, and Abyss Lint will trigger because it was destroyed, so you can get Pike out of your deck to a monster zone that is not under a link, so your Topologic Bomber doesn't trigger again, so you will also get a search with your Abyss Pike. So I really like the synergy with it, because when you go for Megalo, you don't always want to search the Abyss Scales card, because this is more of a going second card, trying to OTK, but when you're going first, negate that actually your opponent can control when they'll trigger. It's not the best kind of disruption, so I do prefer stuff like this. So if you do not lock yourself under any water effects, which is not something you will do every single time, so it's not like you can never summon this, so you can summon your Bomber and then search your Sphere with your Megalo, and then you will have actually a full board wipe, which is very powerful against certain decks, and you will also get the float with Lynn, so you can get another search with Pike. So this is why I really like Abyss Lynn. She has been cut from the deck for quite some time in the most common profiles, but I still like the card. I really like the synergy it offers, and it's another monster you can search with Pike as well if you don't have something, if you have used both your Gund and your Marksman. 3 copies of Dipsy Diva. Of course, these cards are 3, you have to play 3, it's by far the best normal summon. It's not only 1 card Fiber, but it also gets your Neptabyss out of the deck, so you can get more searches, so it's really powerful. 3 copies of Neptabyss. You also play 1 for 1 because it's a level 1 monster, so you can get more copies out of it, and you play so many monsters in the deck that you would have targets even for 1 and discards for MERMAIL and Dipsy Minstrel, so it's not like you will never have enough monsters in your hand to discard. And Neptabyss also has the effect to revive monsters from the grave, so when you bring back Dragoon, and then with Pike combo you can go for the Bahamut Shark, and this will not only get you your Totally Awesome, but since you detach from Bahamut Shark your Dragoon, you will also be able to search. 3 copies of Atlantean Dragoons. You have to play in a certain way with this card so that you don't really discard it too many times, because if you have both a Teus and a Megalo in your hand, then you need to be able to prioritize which one you want to summon, because Teus will give you a search for a monster, while Megalo gives you a search for your spell and trap. So if you summon Megalo first, you might not have another monster to discard for Teus. So when you have both with 1 Dragoon, you need to be able to prioritize it. Always go for Teus first so you can get another search, because you can get a search for your Dragoon, you can get a search with your Teus, and then Dragoon will probably search your normal summon, so you will go for your Diva and your Neptabyss. Neptabyss will give you another search, and with that search and the search that Teus give you, you do have now 2 monsters to go for your Megalo. So you need to be able to manage your resources a little bit in this deck just to make sure that you can actually get everything out of your hand. One copy of Marksman, one copy of Infantry. I still like one of both because now we are in a format that we have actually a lot of variety. We do have combo, we do have control. With Eldritch being around, I think Marksman is a really good card if you can just force a Conquistador early so it doesn't contradict with your combos. And also Infantry, of course, because it's Infantry. And I do play the Link monster of the actual Mermail deck, so these two give you disruption during your opponent's turn under certain scenarios, so this is why I really like them. 3 copies of Dipsy Minstrel. In a format that we don't have too many hand traps, you can actually see this card cutting it maybe to 2 copies because stuff like Nibiru are not really relevant anymore, but we still have hand traps that actually hurt this deck, especially with stuff like Skullmeister being meta and right now. If Skullmeister hits a choke point with Dragoons, then I can actually hurt this deck, so with this you can actually get rid of one of those cards while also triggering one of your Mermails. 3 copies of Swap Frog, 1 Ronin. A really good engine, especially now that you have more than 1 Frog, because with 1 Toad, if you actually use Bahamut Shark, then these cards were dead, but now we have 3. I don't play 3 of course, but you play 2. So with 2 you can actually go for double Toad and certain scenarios. Also, this card doesn't really have to go for Toad because there's one scenario with Needle Fiber that you just having a Ronin Toad on the field can help you get a negate on board because of Needle Fiber's second effect, which is something you will use a lot in this deck, something that you didn't see before with Needle Fiber. It was just a link fodder right away, but now you actually keep it on the field to use its effect during your opponent's turn, so just having a level 2 monster is very important. I'll explain why when I get to the extra deck. 1 copy of Lapis Dragon, a searchable tuner that special summons itself, pretty good, you can just go for Fiber. 1 copy of Fistborg Launcher, this is the target for Needle Fiber, it's basically a glow bulb for the deck, and it's a water monster. 1 copy of Mulling Glacia, there's the combo, you can go for Mulling Glacia, and with Fiber's second effect you can actually loop 3 cards of your opponent's hand because, as you can probably guess, I'm playing Desert Locusts, so if your opponent starts with 3 cards in the hand while you have 1 or 2 interruptions, then it's basically game. And the only hand trap I play in the deck is 3 copies of Ash Blossom. You can replace this with pretty much anything you want, or you can actually try to fit even more hand traps if you don't want to play stuff like Lind or Abyss Sphere, or maybe counter a Megalo as well, but just Ash is the most generic hand trap, so if I play only 1 hand trap in one deck, Ash is the one I'm playing. For the spells, play 3 copies of Deep Sea Aria. This is another reason I really like Megalo at 3, because sometimes you don't really open your normal summon, and maybe you have some weird water monster, so you discard something that is no Dragoons with Megalo, but if you have this card, you can actually search Diva, and this is why I really like having the extra extender, because it can be an extender, but it can also be a starter if you don't have your starters, so this is why I really like something that can discard. The more cards you play to discard water monsters, the more live this card will be. 1 copy of 1 for 1, of course, to get your Neptabyss out of the deck. 1 copy of Monster Reborn, really good card in this deck because Neptabyss is so powerful, and with monsters you played will always be live, so you really need to be able to get back into the game because you will usually use your almost your entire hand during the first turn, but if your opponent manages to crack your board and assemble some resources, you kind of have a difficult time getting back into the game unless you top deck a Diva or a Neptabyss, so this Monster Reborn gives you access to the Neptabyss from the grave, so you can get more pluses this way. And the Abyss cards I play is 1 Abyss Scale of Mizuchi, pretty standard, you can actually do the OTK with Megalo with this, and 1 copy of Abyss Sphere. Like I said, I really like the synergy with Topologic Bomber. This and Lind you can cut if you want, if you don't really like it. I'm not sure if it's the most optimal thing to play, maybe running more hand traps is better, but I really like the synergy with Bomber, so this is why I have in the deck. For the extra deck, play 1 copy of Abyss Gaius. If you cannot use the level 7s to go into Synchro Monsters turn 1, then Gaius is the monster you want to summon because it's a disruption. 1 copy of Big Guy for going second trying to crack boards when you use Teos and Megalo with it. 1 copy of Bahamut Shark and 2 copies of Totally Awesome. You usually summon the first Totally with the frogs, and then when you have Pike searched, and then you can bring back a Dragoons with Neptabyss, then you can go for Bahamut for the second Toad. And now that you don't really have to recycle Toad with Toad in order to do that combo, you can get some advantage from your grave back into your hand. For the Synchro Monsters, play 1 Desert Locust, of course, this with Needle Fiber, and I'm playing 1 copy of Dragite. Dragite is insane in this deck because not only is it a water monster that you can summon under any restriction, but it's also a negate because you will always have a water monster in the grave because it's Mermails. The second effect you cannot really use because you don't play any rock monsters, but still it's something really good, and this is why I said that it's something to keep in mind when you go for your frogs. And even if you cannot summon your Totally Awesome, just keeping a Ronin Toad on the field, which is a level 2, in combination with Desert Locust, which is level 6, you can actually go into Dragite. For Link Monsters, play 1 copy of Relinquished Anima. For going second, this makes Neptabyss even more broken. Needle Fiber, thankfully it's still around for stuff like this. I think it was a right hit to pretty much hit Linkros, because Linkros was a card that wasn't really seeing play in any decks that did not run Needle Fiber, but this doesn't actually apply for Needle Fiber. There were decks like this one and some other decks that were playing Needle Fiber without actually having to run Linkros. Of course, they were running it, but it was something that would still be a thing even without Linkros, so I'm happy that Needle Fiber is still around, because you don't see it too often these days, but in decks like this, it still offers a lot of boost. 1 copy of Abyssalacia. I really like this card because it makes the Infantry and the Marksman to disruptions, because usually Marksman and Infantry 3 are just tough to discard during the second turn to try to pop your opponent's board, but with this card, even if you summon it turn 1 while you have drawn one of those two, then you can actually make infantry disruption because you can discard them during your opponent's turn to add a Mermail monster from your deck to your hand, so you can do more stuff this way. 1 Coral Anemone, you usually use this card to get more frogs into the grave, but it's something that can bring back Nipt Abyss as well, so it's a really good card. 1 copy of Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, very easy to summon with its extra effect because you play a lot of level 7s in the deck, you get a lot of monsters on the field, so if you don't restrict yourself into waters, you can actually summon a monster that some decks cannot deal with, so I think you have to play this in this particular deck. Of course, it's not a budget card because it still hasn't been reprinted, so you can replace it with Unicorn if you want for another Link 3, but still, if you have access to this, it's a very powerful monster that can single-handedly win games. And for the Link 4s, play 1 copy of Apollousa. This deck spams a lot, so it's not very difficult to summon these unless you have restricted yourself into waters, but still, it's a really good card to have. Borlsword to go for the UTKs when you don't have access to your Megalo, and Topologic Bobber because of the synergy I said with Abyss Sphere, which is a combo I really like, but you can cut this if you want. So, yep, that's the deck, guys. It's a really fun deck. I think right now it's more powerful than pretty much it ever was, except of course when it was the tier 1 deck of back in 2012 and 2013, but still, it's a really fun deck. If you are in love with this deck, then you can try it out. I'm pretty sure you can win a lot of games. It's very competitive, it's very fun, so you will have a lot of success while also enjoying yourself. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.